Well, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday Donald Trump was at the United Nations General Assembly. He gave a speech. The teleprompter mysteriously didn't work. The escalator didn't work when he stepped on it either. He was a little bit angry about that. It seemed like some type of weird, childish sabotage against Trump. But whenever all of these major leaders of the West convene, at least as we've seen within the past many months, the number one topic is always Russia and Ukraine. And we are coming off a few months ago, the Trump Putin Alaska meeting. Where are we at right now? It really seems like Trump is fully turning up the pressure onto Russia. The idea of the major sanctions against India if they continue buying the Russian energy, and Donald Trump kind of being hazy with potential sanctions, more sanctions. Remember, the sanctions that were initially waged against Russia are still on. They've been able to get around a lot of it by selling all of their oil to the Eastern countries, specifically China and India. And so, where are we at right now? I've said previously the dynamic is Trump knows he needs to pressure Russia to force them to the negotiating table. Otherwise, there's no real reason for Russia to negotiate. They have a stronger army, stronger military than Ukraine. If it's just Russia against Ukraine, which it is, and sure, there is NATO help, but there's also North Korean help for Russia. Because of the difference in terms of overall manpower, Russia will overwhelm Ukraine in a long-term war or long-term military situation. It's been over 3 years, almost 4 years at this point. The invasion was early 2022, I think February of 2022. So it's over 3.5 years. And we've got Trump reacting to it, now coming out saying he thinks Ukraine can get back all of the land. He said that in a Truth Social. Is that true? Is that realistic? No, of course not. It's more of a negotiating leverage play to put that out there in the public and to say that we are in full support now of Ukraine. And also, let me just say before we really get into this, you're going to get liberals, you're going to get people to say, well, this is the exact same thing that the Democrats did with Biden. It's not. There's two key differences. Number one, in terms of the funding to Ukraine, this is mainly through the United States selling weapons to the Western Europe countries because Ukraine doesn't have the money for that, but the Western Europe countries want Ukraine to get U.S. support because they're a lot more worried about Russia than we are in the United States and then Donald Trump is, and it makes sense based off of the geographical positions of all of our countries. The Western European countries, their arrangement with Russia is going to be a lot different, and their threat assessment of Russia is going to be a lot different than ours is. So what Trump can say is it's really 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He can say we're doing stuff different than what Biden and the Democrats did, where they'll argue, well, it was already retired or it was older military grade equipment, but they were still just sending equipment to Ukraine and using the idea that, well, this is weakening a foreign adversary, so it's being put to good use. They would send then billions and billions of dollars worth of military aid and equipment versus what the United States is doing. We're getting the money back, and then anything we send to Ukraine, hypothetically, we'll see if this ends up being true or not, we would be getting reimbursed through the mineral deal, in which we would go through a mineral extraction within central and mainly western Ukraine because Russia has the Donbass region right now. In eastern Ukraine, they've got about 19 to 20% of the country. I've been talking to people, they say the summer offensive that Russia has waged has really been underwhelming. And so it's about 1/5 of the country. This is the exact same place we were a year ago. You could even argue 2 years ago. Ukraine has done a nice job of holding the line, and that's what Trump is saying, and that's just the reality of this situation. People keep saying, well, Russia is winning this war. Well, of course they are. Look at their military budget in comparison to Ukraine. You can say, well, yeah, Ukraine is getting NATO help, but still look at the overall manpower advantage by Russia. It's not that Russia is winning a war, and it has to be more nuanced to where what is their military expenditure relative to the amount of land that they have gotten. And I do think this is a situation to where if you are Russia, you're taking advantage of NATO by understanding that NATO does not want this to be a bigger war. If NATO enters, it becomes a bigger war. Now you're talking about possibly risking a world war, which obviously they don't want. So Russia can be an aggressor while realizing that NATO can only go so far without escalating it into a position where NATO doesn't want it to be. Even the Western countries that do not like Russia and do not like potential annexation of the Donbass region and those 4 oblasts, because that's what we're looking at. And I mean, if even from the deal that I saw with Trump and what's been rumored based off of the limited land gain that Russia has seen within the past 2.5 years, you're talking about maybe just two of the oblasts being annexed and then Crimea being recognized and then that being it. Evidently, and obviously, we see with Putin and Trump meeting, Russia is not in a position to where they want to negotiate. Russia very likely says, well, we need more land, we need better positioning, we want more leverage going into negotiations so we can demand more. But the issue for Russia is Ukraine will always have some type of leverage as long as they continue to hold at least some semblance of a line, which they've been doing. I mean, this is just based off of total area gained by Russia. It's been extremely minimal over the last 2.5 years. So Ukraine has been able to fight from a defensive position. And, you can say, well, Russia is gaining and they're taking towns, but it's very slowly. It's happening very slowly, and Ukraine does have the backing of NATO. So they're always going to have leverage in terms of having NATO and a lot of those Western European countries that do not want Russia to push far into Ukraine. But it is still a dynamic where it is just Russia against Ukraine. Yeah, sure, there's help. I mean, there's help from North Korea for Russia. But the situation is, if it's just Russia against Ukraine, of course, Russia is going to win. The question is, how much land are they going to get? And Trump's saying, and you can see what Trump says here, do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace? Trump says, yes, I do. Well, that's just more of a defense for NATO. People make this a huge thing like, oh, Trump is inciting a world war or something like that. No, it's very clear that, I mean, are we going to do this thing where Russia flies a drone into Polish airspace and then they say, we're sorry, it was a mistake? I mean, really? Like, Russia should understand this. I mean, it's just a NATO defensive prerogative to say that. That's a defensive position. And then you've got Trump calling Russia a paper tiger, says he believes Ukraine, with the EU's help, can take back Ukraine's territory, all of Ukraine's territory, I should say. So I think this is more so of Trump trying to pressure Russia and telling Russia, well, no, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm on Ukraine's side. Now is the time to come to the negotiating table because Ukraine will be supported by the EU. This will not end well for you. You will exhaust many resources fighting for an extremely small amount of land because of the entire Western European war apparatus being around Ukraine. And there's not going to be troop involvement, you wouldn't think. And I don't think that's what Trump is insinuating. Although, honestly, maybe he is if he's talking about take back the territory. As I've said in the past, the dynamic of Ukraine getting that territory back would come probably through one or two ways. It would be NATO troops joining the war, which obviously you risk major escalation with that, and you push back Russia, or it is through some type of economic turmoil, which they have tried previously, where they sanctioned the hell out of Russia, but then Russia was able to overcome it mainly by selling their energy, selling their oil to Eastern countries, with India picking up a major part of that tap. And then India resells it. You ask, well, what does India do with all that oil? It's arbitrage. They resell it. So that's why Trump is really angry at India. And I heard that there was maybe a potential deal with India. We'll have to see in terms of some type of trade, because it looked like we were going to get a really good trade deal with India early on after the tariffs were initially announced back in April. And I still don't think they've come to an agreement. But this is just Trump basically saying that he says, after getting to know and fully understand the Russia-Ukraine military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, he thinks Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form, with time, patience, and financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders. Wow. So Trump is saying the original, but again, this is more of, to me, more of a pressure tactic onto Russia, basically signaling that they're in it for the long haul. You will exhaust all of your resources fighting for nothing. Just do a deal right now. That's the dynamic, because if there's no pressure onto Russia, then Trump, I mean, what are your real options here? If Russia feels no pressure and they don't like where they're at in terms of entering a negotiation, they feel like they want more land, you just continue to fund Ukraine, but you kind of do the 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing, where liberals will say, well, this is the exact same thing. This was our position, and now Trump is adopting it. Well, no, we are not giving Ukraine free military support, free weapons. This is being funneled through Western Europe. They're bought, basically. So we are getting money back. Or if we do give Ukraine direct support, we already have the mineral deal that's set up, that was negotiated for months and was finally agreed upon back in the summer, where we will hopefully be compensated with minerals in return for the amount of money that we give them for, whatever the military support it equates in terms of the money. So it is different in terms of that, but I do think that at this point, Russia has to play ball. They have to come to the negotiating table. If they don't come to the negotiating table, then there has to be a pressure tactic to get them to the negotiating table. And so Trump is trying to turn up the pressure. Trump threatened sanctions. I don't think he wanted to hit Russia with sanctions. If he was going to sanction Russia heavily, even more than they already are, he would have done it. He threatened them. He gave them a timeline. Putin said, "Let's meet. I want to talk." Putin's been begging Trump to meet for months, and they finally did it. And it was seen as this thing to where, well, Russia is able to get out of the sanctions or the extra sanctions that Trump was going to put onto them because they're meeting, when in reality, Putin had always wanted to meet with Trump. And really that meeting resulted, at least at this point, in just normal dialogue. There really wasn't any type of agreement in terms of stopping it. There had to have been some type of shift within the Russian position. And the question is, does Russia like where they're at in terms of the war situation to be able to negotiate? Evidently, they don't. They want more land. They think they can get more land, even facing the funding apparatus of NATO, because they are a stronger country than Ukraine. And they do want significant influence in Ukraine, and they do likely want a pro-Russian government of Ukraine, and Ukraine to be returned to a pro-Russian country rather than a NATO buffer state. And so I would say that is the dynamic right here. And looking at this, this is Trump talking about Russia and Putin being in big economic trouble. This is the pressure. This is your economy is struggling. But Trump is not hinting at any more sanctions here, because Trump understands, well, if there's going to be heavy sanctions against Russia, is that going to be another ripple in terms of the crude oil situation? And it likely would be. And with where we're at in terms of this economy, and likely 2 more rate cuts upcoming before the end of the year, Trump's not going to want to deal with any of that. So Trump is trying, without truly sanctioning Russia, to force Russia's hand into a negotiation by saying, to me, I think getting the land back, that's just something that is pure pressure tactic. There's no way that the Russians really believe that they're going to be losing the land that they currently have. It just seems, unless there's some type of just economic collapse within Russia, which I don't see how that would happen. I think it'd be interesting if India stopped buying their oil, if the United States is able to pressure them into doing that, although I don't know where that's at. It seems like it's not going to happen, because I heard that the United States and India were talking about doing some type of deal. But there was the threat that, because of what happened in 2022 with the Western countries refusing to trade with Russia, Russia was able to just sell all of their oil to India. And then if that gets shut off, what does that mean for the Russian economy? It could mean very bad things. So you've also got this. What is this? This was just talking about, I think, the EU. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while fighting Russia. That is true. It is amazing the reliance on Russia a lot of these European countries have. And then they continue to say, well, the United States needs to be the number one in terms of the fight against Russia. And that's because of how big our military is. And that's just the reality of us being in NATO. But for the United States, I mean, you look at this from a U.S. perspective. We are, and this is even better for Trump. We can argue this is significantly better in terms of what Trump is doing than what Biden or the Democrats did. Trump is having direct dialogue with Putin. He is telling Putin that, under no uncertain terms, you will exhaust all of your resources. You're not going to gain very much. And on top of that, you want to talk about the United States helping. We are not losing anything. We are giving them old weaponry. We are selling the arms to the Western European countries. We're being reimbursed for that. We're being reimbursed through minerals from Ukraine. Where was a mineral deal under Biden? Where was weapon sales to Western European countries to fund this war under Biden? We're losing nothing, and we are still doing, it's the exact same argument, we still are potentially weakening an adversary in Russia. I think a lot of us want to see the United States and Russia come together in some way, especially when it comes to the Arctic, and maybe a Russian support in the U.S. annexation of Greenland. But the issue is, I mean, this really is like a line in the sand for Trump, because Trump really could go in and say, well, not that you're going to support Russia in a situation like this because you'd be going against NATO, but Trump really, and originally it seemed like Trump had a completely different position on this war. He was a lot more laissez-faire. He was a lot more, well, it's both sides. Now he's saying it is Russia. They're the problem. And so the idea that we're going to form a agreement or a military type alliance with Russia at this point right now seems unlikely. Now, tomorrow, Russia could say, let's come to the table and negotiate and we're willing to cooperate. I think with Trump's relationship with Putin, it's a wild card to where things can change pretty quickly. And we could be back on good footing with Russia in terms of our relations. But right now, Trump is not happy because they're not negotiating with Ukraine. And they don't think they need to negotiate with Ukraine based off of their military situation, the fact that they're way stronger than the Ukrainians. But again, you look at just the front line and where we're at, there has not been a ton of land gain for Russia into central Ukraine. Now, maybe Russia is getting intelligence reports saying, well, they're losing all their soldiers, they're going to exhaust themselves, and their entire country is going to collapse, or we're going to be able to take half of the country. I don't know. I'm not sure in terms of the intelligence they're getting on how close the Ukrainian forces are to a complete collapse. I mean, they have been fighting for almost 4 years. They are exhausting a significant amount of manpower. So is Russia, but Russia's obviously got more of that, and they're using other troops, like from North Korea. So that's really the question. It seems like this is more of a Russia waiting them out, and we'll have to see what ends up happening. But this doesn't really surprise me in terms of what Trump is doing here. This is another thing. You look at this Tylenol thing. So Trump comes out on Monday and talks about, women should not take Tylenol when they're pregnant. This is a well-known fact. Doctors say it all the time. You should not take Tylenol. You shouldn't take anything. It's going to affect the baby. And it is toxic and it's not good. And this was even Tylenol. I don't know if this is their official account. I think it actually is. This is from 2017. And this is what the doctors will say. We don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. And so that's been something that doctors have said forever. Now that Trump says it, and they've made a breakthrough apparently in terms of detecting the makeup, the chemical makeup of Tylenol and something inside of it causing a higher rate of autism. I don't understand why these liberals get so angry. It's like, okay, they found this. Maybe you should not take Tylenol. I mean, you already should not have taken Tylenol when you're pregnant. Now there are these pregnant liberal women, which, by the way, that's pretty rare based off of the birth rates. But there are pregnant liberal women who are now on TikTok taking Tylenol and being like, you already shouldn't take it, whether, regardless of what Trump has said. But it's like these people are really, they're the ones that are anti-science. I mean, Trump, they've come out, they've got this study. You look at it's at Harvard and all these places, but it's already known that you shouldn't be taking Tylenol. It's toxic for babies, and you should avoid everything, especially toxic for the fetuses. So I don't know why these people continue to do this. It's like anything Trump says, they just think it's terrible. You already shouldn't be taking it. So there is that. But either way, guys, that's just the updated situation on Russia and Ukraine. And now Trump saying, and we'll see if this holds, but Trump now saying, well, Ukraine's going to get their land back. I fully support Ukraine. The Russian economy is failing. And it's a pressure tactic against Russia. And that's just what it is. And so Trump has already offered peace deals that include annexed territory. So there's going to be annexed territory unless something unforeseen happens to the Russian economy or NATO troops enter the war. And what are the chances of that? They're extremely low. So either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Links to that's always in the description.